Good morning, and welcome to another Fast Tracks webinar. Webinars are weekly events held on Fridays at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern, and they cover a variety of topics from the Fast Track solutions. To get to the webinars, you can go to our website at goftx.com. And when there, if you'll go over to the FTx Lifeline link, click on it, and then we'll scroll about halfway down the screen until we get to the webinar section. From here, you're able to sign up for upcoming webinars to get notified for the next webinars that are coming, as well as view previous webinars and register for upcoming ones. So to subscribe to get notified, you just click here, subscribe to get notified of upcoming webinars and other Fast Tracks news. Or you can hit the register now to register for an upcoming webinar. And in all the previous webinars, we have the view recording that you can come to and watch at your leisure. So today we're actually going to be going over utilizing mass updates in Warehouse. So in the Warehouse program, what we would do is we'd want to go to Item Maintenance. And then our second tab at the top is Mass Updates. Mass Updates allows us to go through and make changes to multiple items at one time. This can be doing price and cost changes. We may want to update a certain field in the categories of the items. Or you may want to add a lot of items to a new promotion that's started. So we're going to start today with going over price and cost changes. One thing to always keep in mind in using mass updates is the number at the top of the screen here is how many items that you have. So right now we got 4,447 items showing up. So any changes that I make will be changing all 4,000 plus items. Now I can filter this a couple different ways. If I have my items on the screen here, I can highlight them. And I can right click and tell it to filter based on selection. And now I filter to just these 6 items. The other way that you can do filtering is I can actually go to my tree view over here and say, for example, if I want to do cigarettes, I have basics and premiums. So if I click on the basics, I filter to just those 3 items. If I do premium, I just have 1 item. And so all my changes will be made to just what's in this window currently. So let's go back to the basics to have 3 items here. So our first tab at the bottom is price change. So if you look, we have a couple different options here. We can set the price, which what that is going to do is I come down to the bottom and I can set the price. Say we'll set everything as $59.99. When I hit preview, you can see that the new price is $59.99 for all 3 items. It'll tell me what my old price was and then what my new price is going to be. If everything looks good, I can apply those changes and that'll set my new price to $59.99 for all these items. The next option is add dollar to price. So in doing this, what we're doing is we're adding a set amount to what the current price is. So if we want to say add $4, again, I would hit preview. And now you can see from my old price to my new price is $4 difference. So everything is being increased by $4 in this case. Now the same way as adding, I could also remove. I could take and do a -4. And that's going to subtract $4 from my current price. And the last option is add percent to price. So this is just going to be marking it up a certain percentage above what you currently have. So if you wanted to do, say, 10% markup, it's going to take you from your old price. It's going to take 10% or add 10% to that to get your new price. On the right side, we have options of no rounding, round 5 up, and round 9 up. What this is no rounding is going to set it to whatever you have it set to. For example, my first item is at $59.99, but say that was $59.97. If I wanted to round up to 5, what that's going to do is going to round up to the next dollar and make the ending cent a 5. The same thing for round up to 9. If I'm at, say for example, this one is 49.64. If I tell it to round up to 9, it would go to what price I'm setting it up to and round those cents to, in this case, it would be 69 cents. All right, our second box over is gross margin price updates. We can use gross margin or we can use markup. And basically this works about the same way. We can round up to 5, round up 9. We have no rounding. And we base this off of either our last cost, our manufacturer list cost, or our average cost. And what this is going to do is either going to use margin or markup, whichever one we tell it we want to use, based off of whichever cost we want to use. And it will then set our margin to whatever percentage we set it to. So it works basically the same way. If I wanted to, say, do a 10% for margin, and let's do round up to 9. It takes what my cost was, and it's going to round up to get me as close to the 10% as we can, and it's going to make my last digit a 9. In this case, I was basing it off of the last cost, so whatever the last cost I brought these items in for is what I'm marking my percentage up by. All right, our second tab over is called Other Prices. And this is where we can update our MSRP, our manufacturer suggested retail price, or our web price. So those are, if you look at them in item details, we have our MSRP here. So this is what the manufacturer suggests the retail price is for the item. And then our web price is if you have the item also listed on a website, we do have web information and we have a web price. So you can update those from mass updates. These work the same way as far as being able to set the price. You can add a dollar amount to it, or you can add a percentage to the price. All right, our next one is cost change, which cost change works essentially the same way as the price change, only this time we're affecting the cost instead of the price. We have two different costs that we actually look at. We have set the last cost, which is going to take and set our last cost to whatever we tell it we're going to set it to, or we can add a dollar amount to the last cost. Our other options are to set the manufacturer list cost and add a dollar amount to the manufacturer list cost. So the manufacturer list cost is what the cost the manufacturer says the item is. Not necessarily what you paid for it, but that's what the manufacturer lists the cost as. Your last cost is what you last paid for the item. So if you've got it from a different vendor than you normally get it and got it a little bit cheaper, your last cost is going to be different than your list cost. But we can set your cost for either one through mass updates. Along with cost, we have the option to apply to vendor parts. So if we're setting up, say, our manufacturer list cost, we're going to set it to a certain dollar amount. If we tell that apply to vendor parts, that's also going to change our vendor part cost as well. All right, the next topic we're going to discuss today is doing field updates for items in mass updates. So what a field update is going to allow us to do is we have categories and locations for these items. This will allow us to set multiple items to a certain category, manufacturer, whatever you have listed as your categories can be changed from going to the field updates. So for example, if I go and filter to just these Kents here, I can go in and change any of these items. I have my categories, I have my locations, I can change the max order quantity, min order quantity. If we have a change indicator on the item, I can update it. Web category, product line, if we're showing this item on the web or not. Item weight, the minimum quantity on hand for purchase. If we want to prepend item numbers on the labels, and also if there's restocking fee, if it's non-returnable or non-scannable. So all of these are things that we can do field updates on. So to show you how this works, I've already filtered to these 6 items, and we're going to change our bay. Currently I have no locations set on these items. So I'm just going to say that we're going to change our bay, and I want to set this to, we'll say it's bay 3. And I have the option to set selected field to the new field text. So it's going to ask me if I want to change bay to 3. And I'll tell it yes. And as you can see, my bay under locations is now 3 for that item. We go back to mass updates. All 3 of these, or all 6 of these now have 3 as my location 1, which is bay. Like I said, this can be done for everything that's in the drop downs here, our categories, our locations, and then a few of these other indicators that's in the item details. All right, our next tab over is utilities. In utilities, this is where we can go in and add multiple items to our promotions, to our pre-books, to our terms, all at one time. So our first option is create vendor parts for, and we can select our vendor. The way this would work is if we add a new vendor and we need to add vendor parts for these items, we can tell it to create parts. In doing this though, what it's going to do is going to take whatever our item number is, and that's going to be the vendor part number that we create for that vendor for this item. So if your vendor actually uses different vendor part numbers, you'd want to go in and actually create your vendor parts through the items themselves instead of doing it this way. But if you just need to add vendor parts to all the items, the create parts will use the item number to create that part number for you. The other options we have is add to promotion. So say you've got a promotion going for particular items, and you've got it created and you want to add all your items to it at one time instead of doing them one by one. On mass updates, I can go and again filter to the items that I want to do. And under add to promotion, I would select what promotion I'm using. And then I can add all 6 of these items to my promo at one time. So now if I go to my promotions, look at test, and look at my items in promo, as you can see, all these Kents that I just added are there. Again, this is the same way that we would add it to any terms that we would have. Pre-books will work the same way. So if you're creating a new pre-book and want to add items, you would again filter and then select which pre-book that you're putting them into. So for example, if I want to do my cigarette pre-book, I'd select that. The one difference with the pre-books is we have to also tell it what quantity we're going to put on the pre-books. So in this case, we'll say our sale quantity is 3. So that means I'll add these 6 items to the pre-book with anytime these pre-books are triggered, I'll actually put 3 of these onto the orders. All right, I'm actually going to skip the next couple tabs for now, and we're going to go to stamps. Reason is stamps, if you're tracking stamps as well, if I need to add these cigarettes to a particular stamp, like say for example, I need to do the Alabama stamp, I can come in here and filter, and I can add these items to the stamp just by clicking it. If I go back and look at my stamps and select my Alabama stamp, I now have all those items in here. One thing to also take note of is, as you can see, I have multipliers of 0 on all the ones I've just added. So also under the stamp tab, there's also a change multiplier, and that will apply to all the ones we have selected here. So since there's 10 packs usually to a carton, I'm going to put my new multiplier as 10. If I refresh my module, go back to stamps, now my multiplier is 10 for all of those items. All right, and our last tab over here is restrictions. A restriction is essentially if you have a location to where you're not able to sell certain items, you put a restriction on those items to not sell to that city, to that state, whatever the restriction is. This would work the same way. You filter to the items, and then you'd already have your restriction created, and you just select what restriction that these need to be added to and add to restriction. And you've just added 6 items to the restriction that can't be sold to, in this case, the Alabama area. All right, so let's go back to our prospect zones. Prospect zones is basically creating a price exception for an item. So basically, you'll take an account, you put that into a prospect zone, and you can put items in that zone and sell it at a different price to those stores in that zone than what you sell to everybody else. So this works the same as your price changes. You select which zone you're changing the price for, and you're able to set your price at a dollar amount or a percentage to it. If I have items that are in a zone, so say these are already in zone 1, and I want to remove them from that zone, there's remove from prospect zone. I'd select it and tell it to remove, and that would remove these 6 items from that zone. All right. The next thing I want to cover is the additional utilities. The big one in here is going to be this undo changes. The reason this one is important because say if I was to change, let's go back and change the price on these 6 items here. I want to set my price to $1. Say I was actually wanting to add $1 to the price, but I messed up and I hit set price, and I went ahead and applied the changes before I called it. So I now I've set all of these items to $1. Well, under the additional utilities and undo changes, what that will do is it will actually let us select what date range we want to look at, and it'll tell us what happened. We have the date that it was changed, the item number, our description, what happened. In this case, it was a price change. And we went from the top ones were 0 to $1, but the bottom one was from 70.23 to $1. So I can select these, and I can actually tell it to undo changes. When it asks me if I want to undo all these changes, I would tell it yes. And that now reset my prices back to what they were before I made my mistake. All right, our last tab to cover is reports. These are a little bit different than what you have in the standard reports module. We have 3 different sections. We have a price list, a list report, and then a vendor part report. So what the price list report does, it pretty much lists all your items, and you have the option to show cost or not, and then you also have suspect items. So what this will do is, if we tell it to do suspect items only, suspect items are going to be something where your cost and your price are either they're the same, or your price is less than your cost, because generally you're selling for more than what you paid for the item. So if your cost and price equal the same amount, or if your price is lower than your cost, this is a report that will show you, that there's something going on with your pricing. So the way that it works is you tell it if you want to show cost or not, or if you want to do just suspect items only. So just show cost is going to list everything. If I do suspect items only, that will only do the items that have a cost and price where they're the same or the price is less. This report takes a little bit longer to run because it is going to pull essentially every item that you have and show you what your cost and your price is. And that's your items that you'd want to go take a look at to see why you're selling it for less than what you currently pay for it. But when it opens up, basically what it does, it gives you your item number, your description, tells you your cost and your price and what your margin is. So with all of these, where my cost is 0, I'd want to go check those because I should be paying something for these. I don't usually get them for free. And then my price is 0, so I'd want to set my prices on these as well. And so like on the first one where my cost and my price is the same, generally I'd probably want to adjust my price to where it's different than my cost. Right, under the list reports, we have item number list with tree information and the item number list with UPC information. So the first one is just going to list all your items with your tree information. And it only goes out to basically the first 6 categories. But it shows you your item number, your description, what categories they're in. And the item number list with UPC information is going to just list all your items, and if they have UPC associated with them, it'll show you the UPC number as well. That's my item number, description, my cost and price, and the UPCs associated with that item. All right, our last section on reports is the vendor part report. With this one, we basically just select what vendor we want to run the report for and tell it to do an item list with vendor part. This again is going to list all of your items, and it's also going to show you what vendor part is associated with those items. So we have our item number, our description, cost, price, margin, our vendor part number, and how many sellable units come in that vendor part. All right, that pretty much covers everything in mass updates in Warehouse. I hope that you learned something today. And again, just as a reminder, webinars are weekly events that are done on Fridays. And to get to those, you just go to the website at goftx.com. You can do /webinars. That'll bring you straight to this page. And from there, you can register for the upcoming webinars. You can view the recordings of the previous ones, and also subscribe to get notified when we have upcoming webinars and other Fast Tracks news. Thank you, and have a good rest of the day.